Hello guys, this is your friend and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Kurama was sealed into Naruto's sibling instead of Naruto, Naruto x Kushina, movie part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Minato sat in his office chair, rushing through the menagerie of scrolls all over the place. He had looked through every sealing scroll, jutsu scroll, hell he had even checked the forbidden scrolls kinjutsu section. But he could find no other option. He looked out his window, to see a giant nine-tailed fox attacking the village, its mere presence burning the walls it touched. He had sent out his top shinobi to hold back the beast by any means necessary, to no avail. He had but one option left, he had to use the Shiki Fuin seal, a contract with the Shinigami himself. The jutsu would allow him to seal the Kyuubi away inside a newborn baby, thus ensuring that the Kyuubi would never be able to raise a single claw to harm Konoha ever again. But there were several issues with this option. The only babies born recent enough to have the Kyuubi sealed inside of them were his 3 newborn children. One of them would have a demon sealed inside of their body for the rest of their life. He knew how Jinchuriki were treated, and did not wish to force that on either of his 2 sons, or his single daughter. The other issue was the fact that the seal would degrade over time, and the risk of the Kyuubi escaping increased as more of its chakra was used. He knew people would attempt to abuse the child, and the risk of injuries meant the Kyuubi would do everything it could to keep the host alive, further degrading the seal. By Minato's rough estimations, even if the child was left alone, the seal would break and shatter when its host turned 40 or so. The last issue, and the one deciding his choice, was the fact that using the Shiki Fuin would make it so Minato's soul would belong to the Shinigami. He would be devoured, and forced to endure unending hell, fighting against all who used the Shiki Fuin, or were consumed by the Shinigami. He would never be able to see his children grow, he would never be able to see them become shinobi, he would not even know when they died. Those 3 issues were the very reason he was looking through the scrolls, the very reason he was searching through places he would normally deem forbidden. He wanted to see his children grow, he wanted to protect his village, he wanted to assure it was safe. But now it seemed, he was left with no other option, than to use the Shiki Fuin seal. He collapsed into his chair. I have no choice, forgive me my beloved. He looked at the single ring on his finger, and stood up, damn. He smashed his fist into his desk, cracking it. I have finally achieved everything I ever wanted in life, and this happens. He looked out the window as the Kyuubi met the wall, but was pushed back by several large summons. He looked down at the shattered remains of his desk. I guess I better get going. He was about to go to the hospital and grab his firstborn, when he noticed a piece of paper sticking out from inside the desk remains. He reached down and picked it up, and looked at its contents. His eyes widened, a grin plastering his features as he practically giggled. Yes, yes, oh Kami, yes. He jumped in the air and danced around. The solution is perfect. He ran out the door, screaming thanks to Kami. A few minutes later, hospital. Minato barged into the room where his wife and his 3 newborn triplets were, and found Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Sarutobi in the room. Jiraiya-sensei, Tsunade-san, Hiruzen-sama. Jiraiya nodded his head. Minato, you can't use the Shiki Fuin, one of us will do the sealing. You are still young, and have a family to take care of. Minato chuckled. Don't worry Jiraiya-sensei. He pulled up the scroll and passed it to Jiraiya. I don't have to use the Shiki Fuin. Jiraiya took the scroll and unfurled it. Satsu no Reiken. This jutsu was developed by the Shadaime Hokage when he managed to translate a tablet in the possession of the Uchiha clan. The tablet tells of the history of the Biju and the Rakudo Sennin, as well as the jutsu used to split the original Jubi into the 9 Biju. I have nowhere near the amount of power the Rakudo Sennin does, so there is no way I will be able to perform such a jutsu, but I managed to create this mock-up jutsu. It will split a Biju from its power. The power can then be sealed away inside a common object, or to create a pseudo-Jinchuriki. However, the raw power behind the Biju's chakra without a strong enough host will result in the sealed object to either release the chakra, forcing it to find a new host, or for it to convert the chosen host into a new biju. To solve this problem, the biju's power must be split equally between two infants, while the biju's soul is banished from this plane of existence. However, the two individuals must be newborns, and they must not be more than 3 minutes apart from each other in age. If they are, the sealing will become unstable, and the biju will use the bodies of the infants to reform itself. Jiraiya looked up at Minato. It's brilliant, you stop the Kyuubi once and for all, and you don't die. Minato sighed. Yes, but if my children are more than 3 minutes apart in age, then Kyuubi will break free and reform itself. Tsunade stood up and smiled. Well, lucky for us, your two youngest children are no more than a minute apart. Your firstborn was born 5 minutes ago, so we can't use him. Minato sighed in relief. Thank goodness. Minato walked over to the 3 cribs and looked inside. In the first crib was his firstborn son Naruto. He was practically a carbon copy of himself. In the middle crib was his second-born child, his daughter Asuka, looked like a carbon copy of her mother. In the last crib was his youngest child, his second-born son Takeshi. He looked more like his mother, but still had some of his own characteristics. Minato picked up Asuka and Takeshi and turned towards Jiraiya. Make sure my wife is safe. Jiraiya nodded. I will, Minato. Minato nodded his head as he tossed up one of his Hiraishin kunai, before he vanished in a flash of light. Konoha's walls. Minato appeared in a flash of light on the walls of Konoha. The Kyuubi was being held back by the boss summons of the dog and turtle contracts. Kakashi suddenly appeared next to Minato, panting from chakra exhaustion. Minato-sensei, we have a serious issue. Mine and Guy's summons can't hold him off forever. In a matter of minutes, the Kyuubi will be at our front door. Minato nodded. You and Guy have done well. For now, want everyone to pull back. I will finish this myself. Kakashi's eyes widened. Minato-sensei, how could you possibly think that? Kakashi stopped as Minato snapped at him. That is an order, Kakashi. Kakashi stepped back as he bowed. Hi, sensei. All right, he yelled towards the shinobi in back. Everybody pull back now. The shinobi quickly complied as they used whatever means possible to run, whether it be by shunshin, or by simply running, they did it. Minato stared at Kyuubi as the two bosses holding him back disappeared in a puff of smoke. He looked down at his two children. It's now or never. He set the two down and went through the hand seals he had learned from the scroll, Satsu no Reiken. His arms were coated in a golden chakra as he held his arms out. The energy shot from his arms and towards Kyuubi, engulfing the demon in its ethereal light. Kyuubi began to roar as it tried to break free of the binds. Suddenly it screamed in pain as its body began to tear itself open as red chakra began to pour out of it. Finally the chakra completely tore out of the Kyuubi as its body disintegrated into ash and dust. Minato looked as the light from his arms held two items, a crimson-red chakra, and a translucent object in the shape of a kitsune. He turned his attention towards the translucent kitsune, which he assumed was Kyuubi's soul. Begone. He closed his fist, and the kitsune scattered into particles, leaving only the red chakra. He turned his attention towards the chakra. Now, split. He slammed his palms together into a snake sign, and the chakra began to bubble and tear. The single bubble of chakra was slowly becoming two. Minato was sweating bullets as he tried to get the chakra completely equal. Come on, work. He used every last bit of energy he had left and focused it on splitting the chakra perfectly in two. Work. The chakra split apart and formed into two orbs of red chakra, equal in size, shape, and chakra. Minato Namikaze had done it. Minato smiled as he formed his hands into a rooster sign, Fuin. The chakra shot towards the two newborns, and shot into their undeveloped chakra coils. The two Winston cried for a bit as the chakra adhered itself to their coils. Finally the chakra completely went inside of their bodies. The two infants glowed for a few moments before the glow receded, leaving the two infants sound asleep. Minato fell to his knees as he panted in exhaustion. He couldn't believe it, he just couldn't believe it. At long last, the Kyuubi was gone for good, and his children were the ones that helped him accomplish this. He picked up the two infants and smiled. My children, you two, are the heroes today. Hospital. 10 minutes later. Minato appeared in the hospital room and set his two children in their cribs, and sat in a chair. Man, if there was ever a time where I was tired out, now would be that time. Jiraiya chuckled as he entered the room. Yeah, I wonder how you are going to relax after this. Especially with how clingy your wife is. Minato sighed as a light chuckle left his lips. Yes, my darling can be quite clingy. But besides that, we succeeded, and the Kyuubi is no more. Jiraiya let out a breath of relief as he sat next to Minato. Good, we wouldn't want this to happen. He passed Minato a scroll. I found this inside the remains of the desk, read it. Minato took the paper and looked at it. It was signed by the Shadaime Hokage. I tried to use the Satsu no Reiken to destroy the Hachibi, Yamato no Orochi, and the Sanbi, Isanade. But the jutsu only served to release them from the bonds they had, and allowed them to forge new ones. When I tried to split the Hachibi, the chakra only partially split, leaving a small fragment to travel away from the main source. The rest of it traveled towards a bull corpse that was near an octopus corpse. Somehow the chakra of the Hachibi forced the two creatures to merge into one, and forced it to reform into a new Hachibi. I managed to use my Mokuden abilities to capture this one, but the other fragment traveled away on the wind. The destruction of Isanade was only partially successful. I managed to destroy the Isanade's soul, but somehow, part of the Isanade managed to survive and ended up floating down the river. When I tried to seal away the Biju's chakra, I lost focus and forced the chakra into a turtle egg. I did not realize the sealing was unsuccessful until I discovered that a giant demonic turtle had been attacking riverside towns a few years later. I had not realized this as I had attempted to seal it inside an urn and then quickly buried the urn. I have made more precautions to solve these issues, and have decided that rather than destroying the Biju, it would be better if I gave each Biju to one of our fellow nations. However, I will fix the scroll for the Satsu no Reiken, just in case we need to use it in the future. Minato gasped as he looked at the information. This is, what happened to the chakra, and the piece of Isanade? Jiraiya sighed as he sat back. Well, I will have to do a bit of digging, but I think I can find something. Minato sighed as he sat back. Alright, I need to sleep, wake me in the morning, I have a village to address. Jiraiya nodded his head as he walked out of the room, leaving the family alone for the night. Next day, Minato stood on the top of the Hokage Tower, looking over the village as the entire populace of Konoha. He stepped forward. People of Konoha, we have just been attacked by the most powerful demon known in existence, the Kyuubi no Yoko. The populace shouted as the Yondaime continued. We lost many shinobi, friends, family even, but I stand here before you to give you great news, news that will rock the foundations of the elemental countries. The entire population looked up at the Yondaime, wondering what the news was. As of last night, the Kyuubi no Yoko was destroyed once and for all. The crowd was so shocked that they did not know how to respond. The Yondaime had just said the Kyuubi was killed, but how? One civilian decided to speak. Yondaime-sama, how is it possible the Kyuubi is dead? Minato looked at the civilian. I used a special jutsu created by the Shadaime himself, and split the Kyuubi's soul away from his power. Its soul was banished to the netherworld, and its power was split in two, and sealed inside of my two youngest children. Minato held his arms out and shouted, Hear me Konoha, for although I may be the one who defeated the Kyuubi, the one who stopped it from rampaging any further, it was my children who stopped the great demon, for if they had not been born, then the Kyuubi's chakra would have broken free and simply reformed itself into a new Biju. He shouted even louder, My children will leave a legacy that will shatter the very pillars of the elemental countries, my daughter, Asuka Namikaze, and Takeshi Namikaze. The crowd cried in roars of joy and approval. cheering for their new heroes. Minato smiled as he headed towards his office. After all, that mountain of paperwork wasn't going to do itself. Time skip. 3 weeks later. Minato sat at his desk. He had sent Jiraiya out to find information on the piece of Isanade and the Hachibi's chakra fragment. If there was any sort of risk to their village, he was going to do everything in his power to make sure he knew about it to avoid another attack like Kyuubi. Minato was about to stamp another document, when there was knocking at the door. Enter. The door opened to reveal Jiraiya walking in, looking extremely tired. Jiraiya-sensei, you're back. I didn't expect you back for another few months. Jiraiya grinned as he pulled out several scrolls. Seems my spy network already had a good portion of the information. From there I looked through some history texts and found the rest of the info. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a folder. That is what I managed to gather on the chakra fragment. Minato opened the folder and looked inside, and found several drawings, paintings, and documents on a demon known as the Ribi no Minharu. The Ribi no Minharu, a leech demon that wears a no mask with the kanji for 0 on it. Its mere presence sends waves of fear into the hearts of all those who come near it. The demon has fed on the energy and life force of many a village. My own village was attacked by it, but for some reason, it only went after the most miserable people in our village, while the rest were spared. But as the beast consumed more of the miserable individuals, it somehow grew stronger. Our weapons had absolutely no effect on it. We managed to capture the beast and locked it in a coffin made of chakra-eating stone. It seems to keep the beast in. We have managed to bury the beast in an ancient burial ground in the lands of Hai no Kuni. Minato stood and looked at Jiraiya. Did you manage to find the burial site? Jiraiya sighed as he reached into his pocket and pulled out a rusted headband. Yes, but this was all I found. Minato took it and found it was a sky ninja headband from the hidden land of Sora no Kuni. If the ninjas of Sora no Kuni had the Ribi, it doesn't matter anymore, as they are all dead now. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a second folder. As for Isanade, I managed to find this. Minato took the folder and opened it. Inside was a list of Kiri nin who had become amphibious after they had been able to hold a great sword known as Samahata. On the next page was a picture of said blade. The blade looked like it was made of shark teeth, but what was most terrifying was the fact that at the end of the blade, instead of a point, there was an open mouth filled with razor-sharp teeth. Jiraiya continued, it seems that the Isanade has made Kiri stronger. Currently the holder of Samahata is a young Kiri nin by the name of Kisame Hoshigaki. He passed Minato a picture, revealing a young boy with tan skin and a straight smile. He had black hair that spiked up, and he had very beautiful green eyes. Minato looked at Jiraiya. Sensei, this boy doesn't look to be affected as these reports say. Jiraiya took out another picture. The photo you are looking at was taken 3 days before Samahata came into his hand. He placed the photo in front of Minato. This was taken a week after he got the sword. Minato looked at the picture, and was absolutely shocked. The boy's skin had turned a pale blue color, his hair looked dark blue, and he had developed gill slits on his cheeks. His teeth now looked like they belonged in a shark's mouth, and his eyes were no longer green, they were a pure white, with a carnivorous and hungry look in them. Jiraiya pointed to several other documents. Also, there were some reports of 1 or 2 of these swordsmen, merging with the blade. Nobody managed to get a clear view, but a few people mentioned a large shark-like man washing away entire buildings with each step it took. Minato kept staring at the reports. If what Jiraiya said was true, then the other villages would be using these demons to make themselves stronger. Which put Konoha at a disadvantage. He folded his hands in front of his face. Thank you Jiraiya, you are dismissed. The Sannin bowed and walked out the door. Oh and Jiraiya, the Sannin turned around, please have my wife come here soon. Jiraiya nodded as he headed out the door. Minato sat back in his chair, thinking on what he had just learned. Sora no Kuni was in possession of the Ribi no Minharu, for a time at least, and if what he heard from old stories is true, then they were the most formidable enemies Konoha had faced up to that point. Kiri also had the power of a Biju under their thumb, and could utilize it as a weapon far easier than they could a Jinchuriki. This put Konoha at a disadvantage. Not only did they not have a Jinchuriki, but they were also severely weakened from the Kyuubi attack. This left him one option to keep this village safe. There was knocking on the door. Come in. The door opened to reveal a woman with pale skin and long black hair. She had beautiful cyan-colored eyes, and she had an impressive figure. She was wearing a kimono that looked like it should be on a daimyo's wife. The woman smiled as she walked towards Minato. Hello Minato-kun. Minato smiled as he stood and walked over to her. Hello Suki-chan. Minato embraced the woman in a hug as he planted a kiss on her lips. Minato broke the kiss and smiled. How are you doing my beloved, your cousin okay? Suki nodded. Yes Minato-kun, Inoichi is a tough guy. So, why did you call me here? Minato's face immediately turned serious. Suki-chan, it involves the future of Konoha. Suki immediately looked at Minato as he began to explain the plan. Little did she know, or anybody know, that this plan would change the world, forever. What? Kushina isn't Naruto's mother. Who is this woman? Why am I asking you these questions? So no. Naruto does not contain Kyuubi, instead his two younger siblings contain the Demon Lord's chakra. How will this change events in the future, and where will it lead to? BTW, the idea for the Hasibi and the Sanbi, I got them from Beast 1500, read his stories, they are pretty good. I hope you all enjoyed the explanation towards the Hachibi and the Sanbi. I personally think it is good. It was October 9th, 7 years after the Kyuubi attack. In that time the village has managed to rebuild itself, albeit it still had a lower shinobi population, but it had managed to work past that issue. In the past 7 years, Asuka and Takeshi had been treated as heroes for being the catalysts to Kyuubi's destruction. They could not walk out of the house without hearing offers of training, or having to run away from their fan club. Naruto, however, was a different story. For the last 7 years, Naruto had been walking in Asuka and Takeshi's shadow. Because of it, he was hard-pressed to gain acknowledgement as Naruto Namikaze, not the older sibling of the village heroes or the son of the hero's father. It made it difficult for him to gain friends, especially since most people only wanted to be his friend for the chance to meet his young siblings. Along with that, he rarely was acknowledged by his parents. His father spent all of his spare time training Asuka and Takeshi to use Kyuubi's Yuki, and his mother was always checking to make sure they were okay from the training, or was with Minato as he trained them. Naruto would spend the majority of his time in one of the training fields far away from the Namikaze compound, not wanting his family to discover what he was doing. The last time he allowed them to find out what he was doing, he was forced to teach his siblings his very first personal jutsu. From then on, he refused to tell them how his training went, not like it mattered, they never asked anyways. Even when they did ask, he would say simply things like, working on my chakra control, or practicing my taijutsu on wooden dummies. Naruto was currently at training ground 17, practicing his taijutsu on a log. As Naruto struck the log, it looked like a well-choreographed dance. The movements flowed as he delivered strikes to several points on the dummy with deadly accuracy. He weaved around it and struck at different points as he spun around in well-timed maneuvers. He flipped back and sent 3 kicks at the top of the dummy before he landed on his feet. Naruto wore a simple set of hakama pants with a long-sleeve button-up shirt. It wasn't the best training clothes, but if he left the house wearing his training gear, then his family might get suspicious. Sighing, Naruto lowered himself and placed his hands in a snake seal as he began to gather chakra around him. Naruto's chakra began to surround him, licking the air around his form as he focused his chakra to his hands. His chakra began to leak from the cracks in between his fingers. He separated his hands from the snake seal and held them in front of him, his palms facing each other as chakra laced around his hand. The chakra from each palm then began to intertwine as it solidified, and took a clear shape. Naruto stopped the chakra flow and let the resulting object fall to the ground. He fell on his knees and panted as he looked at the object he had created. It was a clear, warped object that slowly began to melt, a piece of ice. Naruto cursed as he smashed his fist into the ice, shattering it. For the last 2 months he had been trying to create a solid piece of ice that would not melt so easily. Thus far he has only been able to do it once. Naruto had discovered that while there was a Hyoten bloodline, it was possible to replicate the bloodline's effects. The only issue with that was that it was damn near impossible to do it unless one used a precise amount of wind and water-natured chakra. Naruto was able to get the mixture pretty damn close, but he had not been able to get the ice to stay solid for more than a few seconds before it began to melt. He laid back as he looked at the sky. Damn, why the hell can't I get it? I have been training my chakra control for the past several weeks, and I still can't get the right mixture. I can't ask my father for help, otherwise he will demand I teach this to those spoiled brats. Damn, he sighed as he sat back up, crack, and snapped his head around as he heard a twig break. He got up and looked as the bushes rustled. It must be some sort of small animal. He was about to run away when the creature came running out of the bushes. Naruto's eyes widened at what he saw before him. It was a red fox with grayish-colored eyes. It was about the size of an average fox, but what shocked Naruto was the two tails behind it and the crimson-slitted eyes. Yoko. He pulled out a kunai and held it in front of himself. He was about to throw it at the Yoko, when he saw the fox demon's condition. It was looking at him with eyes filled with fear. Its ears were flattened down and its tail tucked between its legs as it shivered as it looked at the blonde. Naruto quirked an eyebrow. Why the hell is it afraid? He then looked at his kunai, then back at the Yoko kit. It was staring fearfully at the kunai. Naruto stepped out of his stance and looked closer at the Yoko. He then noticed some small gashes in its leg. It's injured, but by the looks of it it's healing, but not all that fast. Naruto slowly put the kunai away and got down to his knees. He gave the kid a gentle smile. Come here, I won't hurt you. The kid seemed to flinch back as it looked at Naruto. He looked down, then saw his kunai pouch. Deciding to take a gamble, he removed the pouch and gently set it aside. He looked back at the kid with a gentle smile. See, I have nothing to hurt you with, come here so I can look at your wounds. The kid looked at Naruto almost with a suspicious expression, but it slowly began to walk towards the blonde. It took gentle steps as Naruto encouraged it to walk towards him. Finally it was in front of Naruto, but it was still shaking like a leaf. Naruto ever so slowly extended his hand until his hand was behind the kid's ear. He gently began to scratch it, causing it to instantly perk up. Purr. Naruto chuckled lightly as he heard the kid purring into his hand, but he suddenly froze. That's the first time I have laughed in years. The kid rubbed its head into Naruto's hand, purring as it did so. Naruto couldn't help but smile at the kid. Maybe I could keep it. Not that it would be a bad thing. It would provide me with some company in that house. He mentally frowned as he thought back to his family. But a chuckle came back to his lips. Who knows, I might even become the first person to ever have a Yoko as a ninkin. That would show those two shitheads. He thought back to his two younger siblings. Grrn. Naruto looked at the kid as it seemed to sheepishly look away as its stomach growled again. Naruto chuckled as he pet the kid's head. Stay here, I will be right back with some food, and I can properly fix up that wound. He looked back to where the injury was to find it was completely healed. Okay, I'll just go grab some food, how does that sound? The kid yipped happily as it wagged its tails. Naruto gave it another stroke on the back before he grabbed his kunai pouch and walked into the forest. 30 minutes later, he walked back into the clearing to find the kid laying down, taking a short nap. But as he stepped into the clearing, it opened its eyes and yawned, revealing its teeth. Naruto sat down and threw his catch into a small pile, 3 rabbits and 2 swallows, and began to construct a small fire. Once he had managed to get the sticks into a pile, he went to grab a flint, when he noticed the Yoko kid had already eaten 1 rabbit, and was now eating the leg of the second one. Naruto chuckled as he watched the kid swallow the last of the leg, and gave what he assumed was a belch. He then went about cooking the remaining bird and rabbit. Once he finished, he gave the kid a whole swallow while he ate the last two animals from his catch. Once they finished, Naruto sighed in content. Ah, that was delicious if I say so myself. Yes, it was. Naruto's eyes shot open when he heard a feminine voice as he turned towards the kit, who was happily wagging its tails. Naruto pointed at the Yoko. Why you see can TT talk K? The kid nodded happily as it wagged its tails faster. Hi, the kid answered in a feminine voice. Naruto looked at her, and took note of its voice. Judging by your voice, I am guessing that you are a girl. The kid nodded her head. Hi, I am. The two just sat that way for several minutes until Naruto chuckled. All that's missing is a human form, though I don't suppose you have one. The kid tilted her head, but I do have one. Naruto snapped his head to look at her. Huh. The kid seemed to wag her tails a bit faster. See, I will show you. There was a small increase in Yuki, which Naruto found similar to Asuka and Takeshi's, and she was covered in a cloud of red smoke. Naruto watched as the smoke disappeared, revealing the kid's human form. She was a young red-haired girl about his age. She had 3 whisker marks on each cheek, and dark violet slitted eyes. On top of her head were 2 red fox ears, and she had 2 fox tails trailing behind her. She was wearing a simple red kimono with white swirl designs. She held up her hand, which had claws on it, and waved. Hi, my name is Kushina Uzumaki. Naruto stared at her. Wow, she is so cute. He barely managed to hold back his blush, then remembered something. Uzumaki, where have I heard that name before? Naruto shook the thoughts from his head. Naruto Namikaze. He shook her hand. Naruto laid back as he and Kushina talked for the next few hours. They discussed on what they planned to do for the future, any favorites, they even went about playing a few games. Kushina burst out laughing. Okay, alright, I got one. You are left with a choice between ramen and ice cream, which would you choose? Naruto smiled. Ramen, easy question. Kushina smiled and laughed at the blonde's answer. Why? Naruto winced. Because if I eat ice cream like I do ramen, I would never stop having a brain freeze. Kushina nodded her head. Good point. Naruto sighed as he looked up at the sky, and cursed as he saw the sun was setting. Damn, now I have to head back to that place. Naruto turned to Kushina. Sorry, I have to get going, maybe we can hang out another time. Where will you be staying? Kushina looked down. I don't have anywhere to stay. Naruto's eyes widened. What? But, don't you have family, parents? Naruto flinched back as she snarled at the mention of parents. She looked away and said in a broken voice. I don't have any. Naruto could tell there was more to it than that. Do you want to talk about it? Kushina shook her head and looked at Naruto. Maybe another time. Naruto nodded his head, but began to think. He couldn't just leave her here, it was dangerous at night. His eyes suddenly widened as he looked back at Kushina. Well, you could always stay with me. Kushina looked up at him, a bit shocked by the sudden offer. Just go back to your kitsune form and nobody is going to ask questions. Kushina seemed to shy away, a bit hesitant to comply. Are you sure? Naruto nodded. Positive. One of the benefits of being the Hokage's son, I can do almost anything in this village and nobody is going to ask questions. Kushina's eyes widened. Your 2-san is the Hokage. You failed to mention that. Naruto sighed. Yeah, me and my father aren't exactly close. Kushina looked away. Gomen, Naruto waved it off. Don't worry about it, you didn't know. Naruto got down to Kushina's level, so, my offer still stands. Kushina smiled and gave Naruto a hug. Thank you. Naruto gently returned the hug. Yeah, it would be nice to have her around, maybe things won't be so bad from now on. Later, Naruto walked through the northern district of Konoha towards the Namikaze compound. As he walked up to the compound, he kept hearing whispers from nearby civilians. Hey look, the son of the Yondaime. He is the brother of our heroes. I wonder if I can get him to introduce us. Naruto snarled as he heard them talk. It was the same thing every time he was noticed by the general populace. He was never looked at for who he was, only for who he was related to. He sped up his pace, wanting to get home so he would not have to deal with these fools any more than he already had to. Once he arrived at the compound, he cut his finger and dabbed his blood on the wall, revealing a seal. It glowed as the gates to the compound clicked open. He pushed open the gates and allowed them to close behind him, locking themselves in place. He walked up to the main house. Every time he walked up this path he felt nothing. No happiness to be home, no fear at what his family might say, he felt nothing. His family were like strangers to him, and it seemed as if that would never change. He opened the door and walked inside. The house was quiet, as usual. Taking off his shoes, he went to walk up to his room. He passed by his father's study, Naruto. He stopped in front of it and turned to see his father at his desk, while his mother was organizing some papers. Naruto took in a deep breath. Yes, to-sama. He referred to his father in a formal way. Minato looked at Naruto. It's late, you should have been home sooner. Naruto lightly bowed. Gomen to-sama, but I was delayed. Minato looked at Kushina sleeping in Naruto's arms. Would it have anything to do with the fox kid in your arms? Naruto looked down at Kushina to see her wriggling in his arms, all the while rubbing her head against his chest. He looked back up at Minato. Hi, to-sama, I found her in the forest with a small injury. I couldn't just leave her there. Besides, I always wanted a nin pet. Minato quirked an eye. Naruto, if you wanted a nin pet, we could always ask the Inuzukas to provide you one. Naruto sighed. Yes, to-sama, I understand that, but I was hoping on using something other than a dog. Minato nodded his head. Very well, have it taken to some time to get it checked. Naruto bowed. Thank you, to-sama. Naruto turned away and headed up to his room. Minato sighed as he returned to his paperwork. I honestly don't know what I am going to do with that boy. He is so distant from the family, oftentimes I wonder if he even considers us kin. Suki sighed as she put away paperwork. I have to agree, Minato-kun. I can't even remember the last time he smiled or laughed around us. I think he was like what, 3? Minato nodded. Yes, I believe that is about right. I think it was at Ino's birthday party. Suki nodded. Yes, his cousin always could make him laugh. But after the two of them stopped hanging out, he just didn't smile or even laugh that often. Sigh, oh well, I'm sure he will come around. Minato nodded. I agree. He looked at the clock. Jiraiya and Tsunade should be returning with Asuka and Takeshi soon. Suki nodded. Yes, do you think perhaps Naruto would have liked to go? Minato shook his head. Unlikely. He hates perverts, and Jiraiya is a big one. Plus with Tsunade in the mix, the perversions would likely increase. Suki nodded her head and sighed. Jiraiya and Tsunade had trained Asuka and Takeshi for years. Most of the time it was to control Kyuubi's Yuki. But Jiraiya had taken an interest in training Takeshi, while Tsunade had taken to training Asuka. She thought back to the day Minato told her his plan. Flashback. Minato looked at Suki. Suki-chan, the recent attack by Kyuubi has crippled our forces. Along with that, I have recently discovered that while other hidden villages have Jinchuriki, they're more than just Jinchuriki in the use of the hidden villages. Suki looked at Minato. Minato-kun, what are you saying? Minato sighed as he placed a hand on her shoulder. What I am saying is that we need to teach Asuka and Takeshi to use the Kyuubi's Yuki. Suki's eyes widened. But Minato-kun, what if they are injured during the training? Minato held her hand in a reassuring grip. The Kyuubi's Yuki will heal them from all injuries. He wrapped his arm around her shoulder and gave her a reassuring hug. Suki-chan, I am telling you this because they will need our guidance for this task. Do you think I would tell you this, or even think of this plan without considering the possible ramifications? Suki sighed. No, I know you would make sure it was safe. But, she looked up at Minato, what about Naruto? Minato smiled. Naruto's our son Suki, he will be fine. Suki nodded her head and smiled, of course. End flashback. Suki sighed remembering that day. She wondered how things would have turned out had they not decided to train Asuka and Takeshi to use their Yuki. She shook the thoughts from her head. No use thinking on what ifs. She then went back to filing away the paperwork. Meanwhile, Naruto opened the door to his room with his free hand and then quickly closed it behind him. Kushina opened her eyes and yawned as she looked around, and her eyes widened at the room they were in. The room was big enough to provide 10 people adequate room, and still have room to spare for luxuries. There was a big window at the side that allowed sunlight to come in large amounts. And there were also several levels to the room, 3 by the looks of it. On the top level was what Kushina assumed to be Naruto's bed, as well as a couch, and a television with a rack full of movies on it. The level below that had a couple desks covered in papers, most of which were encoded in a way she had never seen before. The last level, the one they were on, had a small sparring area on it. Naruto walked up the steps to the top level and set Kushina down on his bed as he walked over to a wall. He grabbed part of the wall and revealed a spare bed. He pulled it out and indicated, "Here is your bed, it's actually very comfortable." Naruto removed his upper clothing and grabbed a set of pajama shirts. He was about to remove his pants, but turned towards Kushina. Could you turn around please?" Kushina shook herself and turned around. Naruto had not noticed the blush underneath all her fur, so she was spared some embarrassment at seeing his body. Naruto pulled on his pajamas and turned towards Kushina. "Good night." He crawled into his own bed as Kushina hopped onto hers. Naruto rolled on his side and shut his eyes as Kushina began circling points on the bed until she found a comfortable spot. She then laid herself down. The two fell into a deep sleep. 3 hours later, Kushina shot her eyes open as she panted. She clutched her chest, having turned into her human form in the night. She took in deep breaths as she tried to calm herself down. She tried to go back to sleep, but her nightmare had scared her too much. Whenever she had a nightmare before, she would always crawl in bed with. She shook those thoughts from her head as she rolled over, and her eyes landed on the still sleeping Naruto. She pushed away her covers and walked over to his bed. She looked at his peaceful features as he slept. She may not know him very well, but he was the closest she was going to get to the comfort she would need to sleep. Kushina pushed aside the covers and huddled under the blankets. She scooted closer to him and rested her head next to his, blushing as she did so. "It's so warm." She closed her eyes and snuggled closer to the blonde. Morning. Naruto groggily opened his eyes as he pushed himself up. For some reason he slept much more soundly last night than he usually did. He went to get out of bed, to find that his arm would not follow his commands. He went to free his arm on whatever it got caught onto, only for his eyes to widen as he saw Kushina in her human form snuggled up to his arm like it was a teddy bear. He blushed in embarrassment as he saw her cuddle closer to the arm whilst she purred, "Oh Kami, I am so glad I have those seals to keep people from looking into my room." He quickly did a kawarimi with one of the nearby pillows. Kushina squeezed the pillow to her chest and mumbled in her sleep. Naruto got up and grabbed himself a set of clothes and quickly got himself dressed. Once he finished, he walked over to Kushina. "Kushina," she grumbled in her sleep. 5 more minutes, she rolled over and turned away from Naruto. Naruto rolled his eyes and kept trying to wake her up. "Come on Kushina, if you don't wake up soon my family's going to find you." Kushina pushed Naruto away. All right. She got up and yawned as she stretched much like a fox would. She brushed her hair out of her face. "Okay, so what are we going to do today?" Naruto scratched the back of his head. "Well, I was going to head to Ichiraku's for breakfast. My family usually isn't awake at this time, so it shouldn't be an issue. Then I was going to go training for the day, at least until I have to come back home. When I get back I am going to finish up on a Yuki suppressing seal I have been working on." Kushina's ears stood up. Yuki suppressing seal. She began to shiver. Since she was a Yoko, her Yuki could very well be suppressed. Naruto nodded. "Yeah, if I can make the final design work, my arrogant younger siblings won't be able to use their accursed Yuki in our spars, and then I can kick their. Kushina sighed. Oh boy, for a moment I thought you wanted to suppress my Yuki. Naruto nervously scratched the back of his head. He, sorry for making you worry. He sighed as he looked at Kushina. Come on, let's get out of here. Kushina quickly transformed into her fox form and leapt into Naruto's arms. He went down to the door and pulled it open. He quickly shut it behind him and headed down the stairs. He passed by the dining room. Naruto, where are you going? Naruto snapped around to see Minato behind him. Sama, you're up already. Minato snorted. Honestly Naruto, I am the Hokage, I have to get up early. You still didn't answer my question, where are you going? Naruto sighed. I am going to Ichiraku's for breakfast, I will be back same time as usual and, Minato cut him off. No, you aren't, we have food here. Besides, it's unseemly for the son of the Yondaime to eat breakfast at a ramen stand. Minato beckoned Naruto to follow him. Come, you can eat when we get to the sparring ground. Naruto's head fell. Sparring ground, just perfect. He followed after Minato with a glum expression. Kushina seemed to notice this and whined to get Naruto's attention. It proved unsuccessful. Minato opened the doors to the training grounds outside and stepped aside as Naruto walked through. The young blonde looked up to see who was there. His mother, Tsuki Namikaze, formerly Tsuki Yamanaka of the side branch of the Yamanaka family, was standing there in her normal house clothes. She had long black hair and cyan-colored eyes. His sister, Asuka Namikaze, had long black hair tied in a ponytail, and had cyan eyes just like their mother. She was also wearing pre-kunoichi wear, and had a smug smirk on her face. His brother Takeshi Namikaze had spiky black hair, and had a kenseikan on the left side of his head. He wore a black set of shinobi pants and a long-sleeve shinobi sweater, and he was also carrying a smug look on his face. Asuka was the first to speak. Well, if it isn't our loser Aniki Naruto, did you finish licking your wounds from that beating I gave you last month? Naruto ignored her and sat down, setting Kushina to his side. He folded his hands across his face much like a certain Uchiha would. Takeshi noticed Kushina sitting beside Naruto. What's the matter Naruto? You so bad of a fighter you need a worthless fleabag to fight your battles for you. Naruto leveled a glare at Takeshi. Shut it, little brother. Takeshi snarled at Naruto. Hey, you're only older than me by 5 minutes. Naruto held up a finger. 5 minutes and 56 seconds, to be accurate. Minato sighed. Naruto, stop antagonizing your brother. He turned towards the blonde. Naruto, I want you to fight Asuka. I will tell when the two of you can stop fighting, no lethal force is allowed. Naruto stood up and walked into the ring as his sister stood across from him. Asuka grinned at Naruto, ready to lose Aniki. Naruto just lowered himself into the taijutsu stance he had been taught, just attack me. Minato nodded. Hajime. Asuka quickly charged at Naruto and pulled her fist back. Eat this. Naruto quickly sidestepped her and struck her in the side. She went tumbling as she quickly righted herself. Asuka pulled her fist back, then smashed it into the ground, sending a crack through the ground. Naruto stumbles a bit, giving Asuka the chance to kick him in the chest. The wind was briefly knocked out of him, but before Asuka could add another blow he swept her legs out from underneath her, sending her hurtling into the ground. Minato stops the fight. Alright, that's enough. Takeshi, you're up. Asuka, you're finished for now. Asuka glared at Naruto as she walked out of the ring. Takeshi walked into the ring with a smug expression on his face. You just got lucky Aniki, me and Asuka could kick your butt any day of the week. Naruto rolled his eyes. Can we get this over with? I have places to be. Minato sighed. Hajime. Takeshi quickly ran at Naruto. Naruto blocked his strike and kicked at him. Takeshi blocked the kick and swung Naruto to the edge of the arena. Naruto quickly got up and avoided Takeshi's foot before it slammed into him. Naruto slid forward and sent his kick at Takeshi's head. He jumped back, and ended up tripping over his own 2 feet. Naruto flipped up as Takeshi brushed himself off. Minato nodded. All right, Asuka, Takeshi, Naruto, all three of you will compete in a three-way fight. Takeshi and Asuka grinned as they looked at Naruto. Naruto simply groaned. Off to the side, Kushina whined as she saw the trouble Naruto was in. Asuka and Takeshi both set their sights on Naruto. Minato raised his hand. Hajime, Asuka and Takeshi quickly ran at Naruto and threw several strikes at him. Naruto proceeded to block each one, but winced as the kicks were a bit stronger than usual. For some reason, if Asuka and Takeshi fought together, their strikes were much stronger than normal. Naruto guessed it was because they both contained part of Kyuubi's Yuki. Suki bit her nails as she watched how brutally Asuka and Takeshi were attacking Naruto. She knew that they needed to do this so they would be able to defend Konoha, but did they have to be so rough on their brother? Naruto sent his own strike out at Takeshi, who quickly flipped back and kicked Naruto. As Naruto fell back, Asuka slipped behind him and delivered her own kick towards him. Naruto fell forward, and sent a kick at Asuka, grazing her arm. OW, she leapt back as she held her arm, which began to smoke as the wound closed up. Takeshi ran over to Asuka and readied himself. Asuka stood up. All right, time to take this up a notch. Asuka's eyes turned red and her nails sharpened as they extended. Takeshi also had a similar transformation as they both looked at Naruto. In an instant, Takeshi and Asuka struck him down, leaving him in the dirt. Minato nodded towards his two youngest. Well done, Asuka. Takeshi, you are able to control Kyuubi's Yuki more easily than before. Asuka and Takeshi bowed. Thank you, Tu-san. Naruto pushed himself up and brushed off the dirt. He looked at his injuries to find a few scrapes, but the bruises would take a bit of time to heal. He walked over to Kushina, who was whining from seeing his injuries, and picked her up. He quickly did a bow, I will come back home later, Tu-sama, and walked out of the training ground. Later, Naruto was walking up to Ichiraku's ramen stand, having not eaten all day. He was seriously pissed off that Minato had put him through that shit without even allowing him to eat anything. Standing next to him was Kushina, who had used a basic henge to hide her tails and ears. She was looking sadly at the blonde, who had been so cruelly treated by his family. Without warning, Kushina wrapped Naruto in a hug and gave him a light peck on the cheek. Naruto blushed as he turned to look at Kushina, who smiled at him. His mood immediately brightened as he beckoned her to follow him as they sprinted to the ramen stand. All right, everybody, Kushina Uzumaki Oz finally arrived. What is her story? What will happen? Again I ask, why am I asking you these questions? Oh, now I remember, to torture you all into thinking of reasons why. Bwah ha 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 ha. BTW, please review, PM, or flame with legitimate reasons to support your flames. The middle of a dark forest of dead trees, a great fortress of black stone towered over them. It looked like it was built from the foundations of the demon realm itself. The towers were high, and cast a great shadow over the forest. The walls were thick, too thick to be broken by any jutsu, not even a strike from Tsunade herself would break through. The walls were being patrolled by large humanoids wearing black armor, and crimson-red eyes glowing from the eyeholes as they carried around great weapons in their hands. In the center of the fortress, a great citadel with spikes jutting out of it and was over 500 feet high. The citadel looked like it was made of a single piece of black earth from the very depths of the demon realm, carved in the shape it was. There were several windows going up the tower's length, but here was but a single window at the very top of the great spire, where a clearly visible room was viewed. Oh yes, my lord. Oh yes, MMMM. Oh yes, more, more, more. Inside the room were two individuals making love to each other. One was a beautiful woman with fair skin and white hair, and beautiful blue eyes. She had a perfect D cup and a smooth figure. The other was a man with crimson hair and golden eyes. His body was muscled and scarred from many battles. He had a handsome face that would make even the most proud kunoichi turn into a fangirl. The man grinned as he kept thrusting his member inside her. Do you like it, my beloved wife? The woman's moans of pleasure continued. Yes, thrust in me harder, my love, harder, harder. The man grinned. As you wish. He released inside her, making her scream in ecstasy as he pulled himself out of her and grabbed his clothes. You have had your fun. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to get back to work. He pulled on his pants and was about to go grab his cloak when the woman grabbed his shoulders and forced him around, planting a kiss on his lips. Oh, please, my love, just one more. She gave him a pout as she pressed her against his back. The man groaned. My darling, we have been doing it all day. I believe that we should cease for now. He pried the woman's arms off of him and grabbed his cloak. He then turned back to the woman. I will be back once I have reviewed the documents. He walked out of the room and began to walk down a set of stairs. He passed by one of the windows, not noticing the long rope dangling from the edge. On the side of the tower, a young girl with dark pink hair tied in 2 long ponytails, and looked no older than 8 years old, was scaling down the side of the wall. She had a set of shoulder pads made from a fine set of cloth with a silver cross dangling from a necklace. The shoulder pads dangled down and covered her impressive bust. She also had a corset wrapped around her waist that had several flaps dangling off it, one that covered her rear. She looked down to see she was only a few feet away from the bottom and jumped. Once she hit the ground, she stood up, revealing she had on a pair of panties and a pair of boots that accentuated her legs and reached up to her thigh. She looked around, finding nothing, and quickly ran to the wall. A shadow slipped behind her and followed her every step. She ran right up to the wall and pressed her back against the wall. All right, so far so good. She looked down to see the shadow at her feet. Cage, do it. The shadow began to shift as it shot into the air and transformed into a large bat-like creature with a long heart-shaped tip at the end of its long tail. It seemed to have no mouth, and had a pair of circular golden eyes. It had large feet and pointed ears. Swooping down, it grabbed onto the girl's shoulders, being careful to not reveal anything, and flew over the wall as 2 of the black armored soldiers were facing opposite directions, missing the girl flying over. The 2 landed on the other side of the wall, just out front of the black forest. The girl gently smiled and turned to the bat. Good work, Cage, come on. She was about to run into the forest when Cage tackled her to the ground and the 2 disappeared in its shadow. The girl opened her eyes and found herself being cloaked by the bat's wings. She was about to speak when she saw a few of the soldiers walking past where they were about to go through. She sighed as she looked at the bat. Thanks, Cage. The bat gave her an eye, smiled and replied in a squeaky voice, anytime, Lilith Heim. The girl, now known as Lilith, rolled her eyes. For the last time, stop calling me Heim. After this, I will no longer be a princess. Cage sweat dropped. Sorry, Lilith. Lilith smirked. No problem. She turned back to where the guards were to find they had passed. This girl was trying to escape this god-awful place, even though this was the place she had grown up in. She was not a prisoner, but she might as well have been. Her father was the most powerful lord in this sector of the demon realm. He was a transcendent berserker, a powerful one at that. There were few who would dare to stand against him. Even some of the lower-ranking Biju were wary of him. Only the Nanabi and above would laugh in his face without fear of his retaliation. Her mother was a succubus, a powerful one as well. She was stronger than any of the other succubi. In fact, only the succubi queen would be capable of defeating her. But she was nowhere near as strong as her father. The 2 had fallen in love and had claimed each other as their mates, and after 100 years of their marriage, they finally conceived a child, but the result displeased her father. Her father had wanted a son as his heir, not a daughter, and had been extremely cruel to her because of it, a rare occurrence in the demon realm. As children were a commodity, it was an unspoken law of the demon realm. Children, no matter whose, whether it be one's own or another's, they were to be treasured for all time, but because of her father's power, nobody dared to oppose him, and any demons that could oppose his strength were out of their jurisdiction as they ruled other lands, and did not wish to risk a war. Her mother was no better. All she really cared about was Lilith's father. Over the years, she was ridiculed and belittled by her father, and when she finally came of age to be trained, she was given impossible tasks that she doubted even he would have been able to accomplish at her age. He succeeded in getting a son the second time, and had trained him to be as strong as he could be without belittling him in any way. A week ago, her father had come to her room and told her that she would be removed from the position as his heir and would be married off to one of the princes of the other domains. This made her pale, as all the other princes were extremely unpleasant, having met them at her father's dinner parties. They were also much older than her, at least by 6 years. They also did not care about the bonds of mates and lovers, and would gladly cheat on their lover at a moment's notice. She knew that once they heard that she was the daughter of a transcendent berserker and an elite succubus, they would be after her body like wolves to a fresh kill. She knew that with her succubus blood, she would come to love, but she also had transcendent berserker blood in her, which meant she would only allow her mate and chosen lover to do anything to her body, and there was not a damn thing that would make her say otherwise, not her father, not her mother, not even one of the highest-ranking Biju. Her body would belong to her chosen mate, anyone else would be ripped to shreds before they would have a chance to blink. She was quite the looker, and one day would surpass even her mother's beauty. She was already hailed as the most beautiful princess in all the lands, and had already been asked to marry several men, and even some women who preferred their own came up to her, but she refused to become a political tool. Just because she was born a girl, did not mean her father could do whatever he pleased to her. Lilith tore through the trees with all haste as Cage used his shadow powers to keep her hidden as she headed to the great structure before her. She stopped and hid behind a bush and looked before her. It was a massive stone structure that was about 5 stories high, and was covered in demonic runes. It sat atop an altar, and was guarded by 2 of her father's most trusted soldiers. The 2 looked around, making sure none made it to the structure. The structure was an ancient gateway, only 5 existed after the Great Purge that overthrew the regimes that ruled the demon realm. It was Lilith's only way out of the demon realm. Using Cage's shadow manipulating abilities, she slinked up to the gate. She grabbed a nearby stone and tossed it into the woods, drawing the attention of the guards. They ran into the forest to see what it was, allowing Lilith and Cage to pass through the gates, with the 2 guards none the wiser of her escape. In Konoha, Naruto was lying on his couch as he was tweaking his newly developed Yuki suppressor seal. With Kushina's help, he has finally managed to create a final product that worked exceedingly well. During his spar with his siblings, he had tested it out, and had completely wiped the floor with them. But after kicking there several times using the seals, they had whined to their father for him not to use them during their spars, saying that it was an unfair advantage. Minato had agreed, saying that Naruto should use his natural skills to defeat his siblings, not some flashy seals. Naruto had been incredibly angry with that decision. Why the hell couldn't he use his own seals, which he had spent the last year perfecting, especially when they were allowed to use Kyuubi's Yuki? It just wasn't fair. In the last year since Naruto and Kushina had met, they had learned a lot about each other, but Kushina still did not wish to talk about her parents. Apparently it was a very sore subject if a year's worth of trust was not enough for her to tell him. Kushina was lying on Naruto's bed, reading a few books Naruto had in his library. In the year she has lived with Naruto, she had learned quite a lot. She even invented her own taijutsu style based off of movements she watched from the Inuzuka and Hyuga clans. Naruto had also managed to get his ice element in check. He could now form a solid piece of ice that would not melt unless it was left in direct sunlight for several hours. He also learned he had an affinity for lightning element, and he has already started on recreating storm chakra. Naruto sighed as he turned to Kushina. So, how have you been coming along with that elemental application to your taijutsu? Kushina sighed as she rolled over and looked at the blonde. It's been going okay, but it is difficult to focus it properly, especially since my 2 elements don't really work well together. They had discovered that Kushina had an affinity for Suiten and Kaden style ninjutsu. Kaiden jutsu were plentiful in Konoha, but Suiten jutsu were not. They had about 15 Suiten jutsu in the shinobi section of the library, and about 47 Kaiden jutsu. The problem was getting into the shinobi section. Along with that, whenever she tried to draw on one, the other would interfere, making it difficult to focus it. They would be allowed in the shinobi section once they became genin, but they had not even entered the academy yet. Naruto sighed and sat up. Come on, let's go to one of the training grounds and spar. Kushina was about to get up. But suddenly a flash of light flooded the room and a girl appeared in the middle of the training area of Naruto's room with a large bat-like creature following. Naruto stared in shock. What the hell? The girl stood up and staggered. Ow, if I knew it was going to hurt that much when I landed I would have brought some pads. Ouch. She looked up, and her eyes widened as she saw two people in front of her. Naruto examined her features. Her nails were sharp, and she had a strong, yet lovely figure, and the bat at her side was clearly demonic. Then there was the matter of how she got in here. Neither his father, nor Jiraiya were able to get past his security seal network, and somehow this girl had gotten past. Not only that, but her aura felt demonic. You're not human, are you? The girl's eyes widened a bit as she nodded her head. She quickly narrowed her eyes as she got into a fighting stance while her pet let its hair spike up on end. Yeah, and what could you possibly do about it, human? Naruto placed his hands in a ram seal, and suddenly the room was lit up with a greenish glow as hundreds of seals were revealed covering the room. The girl fell to the ground and began to pant, as did the bat beside her. She looked up, and froze at the cold look in Naruto's eyes. Naruto kept up his gaze as he spoke. This entire room is filled with Yuki suppressor seals. Currently I have them at 25% setting, but I can easily set them to 100% and drain you of all your power, making you an easy kill. The girl looked up, and noticed the two fox tails behind Kushina, Ayoko. She turned towards Naruto, but, how is she standing? She is Ayoko. Naruto pointed at Kushina. My friend here has several counter seals on her body, making my seal's effects useless on her. You, however, are not so lucky. The girl shivered in fear as she looked into Naruto's eyes. They were the emptiest, most soulless eyes she had ever seen. She had never been this scared before from a mere gaze. Not even her father's gaze could scare her this badly, and that was saying a lot, especially since she was the target of many freezing glacial glares from her father. But somehow this human had made her father's glare look mediocre. Kushina edged away from Naruto. Having lived with him for the past year, she saw the cold looks he would give his family. This blew all of them away. Thank whatever deity is watching over me that I am his friend. The girl began to pant as she raised her hand in surrender. Her pet was still shivering as she spoke. Please, let me explain. Naruto raised an eyebrow, then shrugged his shoulders as he released the Yuki suppressor seals. She fell over and panted as she tried to get her breath back. After they allowed her to get her breath, they sat on the sofas in the room, while the large bat perched itself on one of the headboards. The girl lightly bowed her head. Sorry for intruding, but I didn't really have anywhere else to go. My name is Lilith Hellscream. Kushina smiled. So, how about you tell us about yourself, Lilith? Lilith bit her lower lip and shifted in her seat. Are you sure you want to hear about it? Naruto nodded. Of course, why wouldn't we? Lilith sighed. Alright. Half an hour later, Lilith had told Naruto and Kushina everything up to the point of her coming to the human realm to escape the fate of being married off to some perverted prince. Kushina gave Lilith a sad expression. While Naruto looked in her eyes for any kind of deceit, he found none. He sighed. Well, I guess it wasn't your fault, but why did you come to this spot of all places? Lilith blushed in embarrassment. Well, I have never been to the human world, and I had no idea how the gate worked, so I just went where the gate took me. Ha 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 ha, she laughed whilst she had a light bead of sweat coming off her head. Naruto's eye twitched. You mean, you came to unknown territory, without a single idea on what you were going to do once you got here? Lilith blushed in embarrassment as she turned away. Pretty much, ha 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 ha. Naruto sighed in annoyance, while Kushina spoke up, maybe you could stay here for a while. Would that be okay, Naruto? Lilith started waving her hands in front of her. Oh no, 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 I wouldn't want to intrude. Kushina leveled a stern look at Lilith. Do you have somebody in this realm that can help you? Lilith opened her mouth to speak, then deflated as she shook her head. The two girls looked at Naruto to see him shrug his shoulders. Why not? I don't see a problem with it. Besides, he gave them a smile, causing their hearts to skip a beat, and a light blush to tinge their cheeks. Kushina and I could use the company. Lilith smiled as she bowed. Thank you very much, but, she looked up, don't you have parents? What about their opinion? Naruto sighed as he grabbed his scalp. I don't really think they are going to care. Lilith gave him a curious look. Okay, but what are you going to tell them? Naruto shrugged his shoulders. I'll figure it out when I get there. Shouldn't be too hard to come up with something. Naruto stood up and went to walk out the door. Kushina quickly turned into her Yoko form and hopped on his shoulders. Lilith followed behind her with her bat melding into a tattoo on her back. Naruto walked down the stairs and heard laughing. He looked over the edge to see his father and his two siblings talking as if there wasn't a care in the world. His father waved them goodbye as they walked towards the stairs as he entered his office. As Asuka and Takeshi walked up the steps, they noticed Naruto. Well, looky here, Asuka, it's the weakling. Asuka grinned. Yeah, so how is the weakling today? Still upset over getting your kicked again? Naruto merely turned away and began to walk down the stairs as he and passed by the two of them. Lilith waited behind the corner and watched. Man, and I thought my brother was bad. Takeshi snarled at Naruto and grabbed his shoulder. Hey, we were speaking to you. Asuka put in her own 2 cents. Yeah, learn to respect your betters. Naruto snapped his head at them and released a monstrous aura that made the room's temperature drop several degrees. Asuka and Takeshi froze in fear as Naruto gave him a soulless look. You both know that if I wasn't forbidden to use my seals in our spars, I would make both of you eat dirt before I sent you to the hospital with injuries that wouldn't heal for a month, so shut your mouths and scram. Asuka and Takeshi backed off. He was right. Naruto was stronger than a genin, while they couldn't even land a hit on a genin-level opponent. Their Yuki was their only real trump card, and Naruto could easily cut that off. If it wasn't for their constant begging to their father, they would not even get the chance to beat him. The two quickly ran up the stairs and ran down the hall towards their rooms. Lilith walked down the stairs and turned towards Naruto. Who the hell were those two? Kushina spoke up. His siblings, arrogant aren't they? Lilith's eyes widened. Those were Naruto's siblings. Damn, they were just as bad, if not worse than her little brother. Naruto sighed. Come on, my father is in his office. Naruto walked down the stairs and towards his father's office. He opened the door and walked inside to see his father sitting in his chair, just holding his head up. Naruto bowed and spoke with a forced politeness, "To-sama." Minato looked up at Naruto and groaned. Oh, Naruto, it's you, what do you want? I am busy as you can see. Naruto's eye twitched, but kept his composure. Ah, you see, he indicated towards Lilith. My friend here, who has helped me out for a while, has just lost her parents and house and has nowhere to go. I was wondering if it would be okay if she stayed here. I would take full responsibility for her and everything. Minato sighed and waved his hand in a bored manner. Yeah, she can stay with you. Is there anything else you need to talk to me about? No, then please leave, shoo. Naruto bowed lightly. Thank you, To-sama. Naruto turned around and walked out of the office with Lilith trailing behind. They both headed upstairs with Kushina looking at Naruto with a worried expression. Once they reached his room, Kushina jumped off of Naruto's shoulders and transformed into her human form. Naruto then grit his teeth as arcs of electricity began to spark off random parts of his body as he began to breathe harshly with an icy mist escaping through his lips and nostrils. The temperature in the room dropped as a small layer of ice began to coat the floor around Naruto while electricity began to spark off of his blonde hair. Kushina quickly placed a hand on his shoulder. Naruto, please, calm down, this is not the place to lose control. Naruto began to take deep calming breaths as the temperature began to stabilize and the static stopped arcing off of his body. Finally, after 2 minutes, Naruto nodded his head towards Kushina. Thank you, Kushina. Kushina smiled at Naruto. You're welcome, Naruto. Naruto sighed as he walked over to his couch and laid himself on the cushions. He closed his eyes and took deep cleansing breaths to keep himself under control. Lilith watched Naruto. He is like me, in a way, both of us have parents that favor one child over the other, and both of us got the short end of the stick. She sat down on the couch and kept looking at the blonde. Maybe, he and I could be friends, we understand each other, in a way. And like he said, they could use the company, as could I. Lilith was about to speak, but Kushina beat her to the chase. So, how about we introduce ourselves, I'll go first. Kushina sat down and pointed to herself. My name is Kushina Uzumaki, I am a Yoko of 2 tails, she said as she pointed to her 2 tails. I like salt ramen, fire, water, and kenjutsu. I dislike arrogant bigots, and people who judge only on appearance. My goals, I will tell you when I get to that point. Lilith smiled. Nice to meet you, Kushina. Should I go next? Naruto shook his head as he sat himself up. No, you are a guest, and it would be rude of us to make you go next. My name is Naruto Namikaze. I am a human, I like ramen, red bean soup, gardening, and training. I dislike arrogant bastards and those who neglect others out of favoritism. My goals for the future, still working on that one. Lilith nodded her head. Okay, I guess it's my turn. My name is Lilith Hellscream. I like bats, music, and meat cooked well done, but I am not necessarily a picky eater. I dislike my bastard fat mother, and arrogant little brother. My dream is to find the perfect mate and bear his children. Naruto and Kushina looked at Lilith. Wow, you already have your dreams set up, impressive. Lilith blushed at the praise. Thank you, Naruto. Naruto shrugged his shoulders. No problem, alright then. Naruto got up from the couch. I am going to go train, you two are free to join me if you like. Kushina immediately stood up. Wait for me, Naruto. Lilith watched as the two walked towards the training area of the room. She didn't really have much else to do. Why not? She stood up. Hold on, I'm coming too. Lilith ran over to the two as she smiled to herself. This is definitely going to be nice. Okay, I am thankful that you all have been willing to wait for this update. A new girl has arrived. What will she do in the future to help our young blonde hero? What events will lead up to the answers? Why am I still asking you all these questions? Find out on the next update of Demonic Legends, Calamity of the Frozen Storm. Flames with no valid points will be ignored in full. Please PM, read, and review. Also, please check out the poll on my profile. It is very important for my story, Uzugaku's Rising. 2 months after Lilith had moved in with Naruto and Kushina, Naruto's father had told him that he would be going to the academy, while his siblings would remain home to continue their training of their Yuki. He would be in the same class as his cousin, Ino Yamanaka, as per his father's request. Naruto had been in a bad mood ever since then, except when he was around Kushina and Lilith. He was stuck in a class with his cousin, and if what he heard his father talking to his mother about was true, all of the other clan heirs. Naruto could barely stand dealing with the clan heirs when his father invited them over for dinner, and now he would be stuck in a classroom with every last one of them. From the Aburame clan, Shino Aburame, son of Shibi Aburame and a foreign kunoichi who died in childbirth. Shino was as cold and emotionless as his father. He never cracked a smile, and he never spoke more than a few words. Whenever he came over, he would ignore Naruto saying, "It is illogical to converse with you, for some bullshit reasons like, lack of interest, or, do not wish to be distracted." All in all, Naruto did not like him. From the Akamichi clan, Choji Akamichi, son of Choza Akamichi, he was fat, nothing else to say. He did nothing but eat, whine, and eat. Did he mention eat? When Naruto pointed this out to him, he began bawling saying, I am not fat. Hell, he never even used the word fat in his kami-damned sentence. From the Hyuga clan, Hinata Hyuga, daughter of Hiashi Hyuga, god damn it. Not only was she the spoiled princess of the Hyuga family, have the backbone of an invertebrate, and was so shy that if someone so much as tried to shake her hand she would faint, but her baby sister was more dangerous than her. From the Inuzuka clan, Kiba Inuzuka, son of Sume Inuzuka, he was the fourth most arrogant person in his age group, not to mention he was as big a pervert as Jiraiya. He was always making passes at his sister and Lilith, sometimes even going so far as to, accidentally, trip and nearly grope them. From the Kurama clan, Yakumo Kurama, the only remaining heir of the Kurama clan. She was, supposedly, the greatest prodigy ever seen in the clan. The girl could barely stand on her own. She was a spoiled little priss who went insane every time things didn't go her way. He swore that one day, she would cause the destruction of her clan. From the Nara clan was Shikamaru Nara, son of Shikaku Nara and Yoshino Nara. He was lazier than his father was. All he did was sleep and look at the clouds, but surprisingly, he was one of the few Naruto might be willing to work with, so long as he didn't have to hear him say, troublesome, every 5 minutes. From the Uchiha clan was the only person more arrogant than Kiba other than his own siblings, son of Fugaku Uchiha and Makoto Uchiha. He had the exact same, mightier than thou, mindset all Uchiha had, but his was 100 times worse. Naruto would not be surprised if one day he went missing just so he can gain power for his own sick and twisted agenda. And of course, last but not least, from the Yamanaka clan, his own cousin, Ino Yamanaka, the most annoying person he had ever met that was not from the damn Haruno family. Oh how he wanted to grind her throat into dust, then throw her severed head in a lake. And now, he was stuck in the same classroom as all of them. Well, at least Naruto was allowed to bring Kushina with him, though she had to remain in her Yoko form at all times. Along with that, he had managed to convince his father to let Lilith enroll. So, the academy classes would not be all that bad. Currently, Naruto was sitting on the roof, trying, and failing, to focus his wind and lightning chakra to create storm chakra. It was far more difficult than when he tried to focus his wind and water elements to create ice. Wind chakra naturally was a counter for lightning chakra, so every time he drew on his wind chakra, he was unable to focus on his lightning chakra. He snarled in aggravation as he smashed his fist into the roof when he accidentally scarred his hands again. Kami damn it. He stood up and walked up and down the roof. What am I doing wrong? I have gone through every chakra exercise for both elements, I have managed to focus the two of them equally, and I have managed to focus it without using hand signs, yet every time I try to bond them, they end up doing this. He looks at his hands, which were charred and burned from the wind and lightning chakra literally exploding in his hands. He sat down and growled, what am I doing wrong? He punched the roof, leaving small cracks inside it. Sighing to himself, he laid on his back and stared at the stars. Naruto. Naruto turned his head to see who had called him, to find Kushina sitting on the windowsill. Are you alright? Naruto sighed and sat up. Yeah, I am alright. He turned towards Kushina, and flinched back at the look she was giving him. She was staring at him intently with a look a mother would give a child who she knew had lied to her. Naruto, you and I both know you are not alright, so don't lie to me. She smirked. Or do you want to help me train in my fire element again? Naruto shivered at the mention of training in Kushina's fire element. It was more like dodging fireballs twice the size a Genin Uchiha could make. He could still feel the burn she left on his from their last fireball training, 3 months ago. Naruto sighed and looked back up. You know me too well, Kushina. Kushina giggled and hoisted herself onto the roof. If I didn't know you very well, then I wouldn't be a very good friend, now would I? Naruto looked at her. If that's true, then I must be a terrible friend, as I still know very little about you. Hell, you won't even tell me a single detail about your past. He had to dodge a small blue ball of fire before it collided with his face. Kushina was baring her fangs, and the hair on her tails was on end, and blue fire was coating her hands and forearms, and my answer remains, I am not talking about it. She flicked her wrist, putting out the fire as she sat down. Naruto looked at Kushina. You know, one of these days, you are going to have to tell somebody. Kushina sighed and pulled her legs into herself. I pray that I never have to. Naruto remained silent as he rolled onto his back, closing his eyes. Midnight. Naruto and Kushina had both fallen asleep on the roof, having been lulled to sleep by the flowing winds across the village. They slept on the roof peacefully, well, almost peacefully. No Ka-chan. Naruto's eyes fluttered open as he heard a pained whimper. Please, he sat up and rubbed at his eyes, getting the sleep out of it. What the? He looked to his side to see Kushina thrashing about in her sleep, her face in a pained expression on her face. Kushina. He scooted over and looked at her as she continued to whimper. Kushina sobbed lightly. No, please san. She began to thrash about in her sleep, gripping her hair and letting a few choked sobs out. Naruto grabbed her shoulders. Kushina, wake up. He shouted as he began to rapidly shake her. Her eyes snapped open as Naruto's shout reached her ears. She blinked a few times as she took in her surroundings, then began sobbing into Naruto's shoulder, shaking like a leaf as her tears stained Naruto's shirt. Naruto held onto Kushina and caressed her hair. Shish, there, Kushina, it was only a nightmare. Just calm down. Kushina continued sobbing into Naruto's shoulder, but after a little while, she began to calm down, her sobs and shaking lessening. Naruto looked at Kushina. Kushina, I heard you talking in your sleep. Kushina flinched as Naruto continued, I know that whatever your nightmare was about, it involved your family. Whatever they did to you, it hurt you. What did your family do to you? Kushina looked down and turned away. It's none of your business. She suddenly fell over as Naruto let go of her and stood up, walking to the other side of the roof. He sighed and turned towards her. I have told you everything, Kushina, every insult, every last moment of my life. Even when I did not want to tell you, I told you. He turned and sighed. How long do we have to be friends before you decide to return the favor? Kushina looked at Naruto, and slowly looked down. He's right, he has told me everything, even when he didn't want to. He told me after I asked repetitively, despite the fact he didn't want to tell. She sighed. We have been friends for a long time, and I still haven't told him anything. She sighed and crawled over to him. It's about time I return the favor. Naruto looked out at the village, then flinched as he felt a soft grip on his shoulder. He turned around to see Kushina staring at him. You are right, Naruto. You have told me everything about you, and I have hardly told you anything. It's about time that was changed. She squeezed Naruto's shoulder lightly. It is a long story though. Naruto gazed into her eyes, and smiled. I like long stories. Kushina nodded her head and sat down. Well, I should probably start at the beginning. She took in a deep breath and sighed. My home village is a small town located just outside the capital of Uzu no Kuni. My family was one of the 5 noble houses of Uzu no Kuni's royalty. I was the oldest daughter of 12 siblings, with 2 others being only a year apart from me in age. My family loved and cherished me. I was loved by everyone. Even the ruler of Uzu no Kuni considered me as if I were his own daughter. However, she looked down sadly. Because of something that happened before my birth, this was not to be. Naruto raised an eyebrow. What happened? Kushina narrowed her eyes and snarled, Kyuubi. Naruto's eyes lightly widened. Kyuubi, you mean the Kyuubi no Yoko? Kushina nodded her head. Yes, 2 weeks before my birth, the Kyuubi attacked my village as it was on its way towards Konoha. Its chakra seeped out like runoff from a waterfall, its carnage killing all it came across. As it released its foul chakra, it entered the hospital where my mother was placed for the final stages of her pregnancy with me. Every single person in the hospital, save for my mother, died. When I was born, I was considered a miracle child, as I was the only one newborn to have survived the Kyuubi's wrath. The village practically worshipped me, until she grew silent as tears began to brim from her eyes. Naruto looked at her worriedly. Until what? Kushina let out a choked sob. 3 weeks before I came here to Konoha, the truth of my survival came forth. Flashback. Kushina was laughing as she chased after her younger brother, who was holding a large orange ball in his arms. She suddenly tripped and tumbled over her own 2 feet, slamming into her other siblings. Off to the side, her mother, holding her newborn baby sister, was smiling as she nursed her newborn daughter whilst watching her other children. Kushina was laughing as she wrestled with her little sisters, who were climbing over her. Then suddenly her eyes snapped open and she let out a scream of pain. Oj. She clutched her head in her rear as she felt massive amounts of pain course through her body. The door to her home slammed open as her father came running out, hearing the scream. He looked to where he heard the scream coming from to see Kushina lying on the ground, clutching her body. Kushina. Her mother had already run down and was now looking her over. From the house, several nobles came running out and flocked around Kushina's prone form. Her father picked her up and ran out of the family grounds, heading straight towards the hospital. Nobody noticed that her canines were slightly elongated. Later, Kushina groggily opened her eyes, the lids fluttering open as her eyes slowly began to adjust to the light. She groaned loudly as she sat up, rubbing at her eyes. She opened them up, taking in her surroundings. She was in a hospital room with several machines hooked up to her. She looked at her arm to see that she had an IV needle inside of her arm, which was hooked up to a pack of nutrients. She HMPHED and grabbed the needle in her arm, ripping it out. Itai. She clutched the area where the needle had been ripped out and slid off the bed. She stumbled for a moment before she grabbed the edge of the bed. Ouch, what happened to me? Kushina shook her head as she felt drowsy. Her legs shook violently as she finally gave out to her own weight. Creak. The door to her room opened and a doctor walked inside. All right, I should probably take the needle out of. Kushina, what in the name of Kami are you doing? The doctor ran over to Kushina and picked her up. You just had a very painful experience, you need to rest. Kushina pouted and crossed her arms as she was set back on the bed, but I feel fine. The doctor gave her a, are you kidding me? Look, you were just on the ground shaking violently, I don't think that qualifies as fine. He pulled the blankets over her, and smiled. Kushina, this experience must have been incredibly painful for you, but I think that the outcome is worth it. Kushina raised an eyebrow. What do you mean? The doctor smiled. Let's wait until your parents get here before we explain anything. As if Kami herself was watching, the doors to her room were slammed open, and Kushina's parents, along with some of her siblings, came pouring in. Oh Kami, Kushina, are you alright? Her mother grasped her face and started looking her over. Are you hungry? Are the doctors treating you kindly? Kushina blushed as her siblings started giggling at her predicament. Ka-chan, you're embarrassing me. She gave her mother a look that reminded her mother of a kicked puppy and she quickly let go. Once everyone had asked Kushina if she was alright, the doctor asked the younger siblings to leave the room. Once the door was closed, he turned to them with a serious expression. Now, I am sure you are all wondering what happened to Kushina to cause this predicament. Kushina and her parents nodded their heads. Well, to be honest, I am not entirely sure myself. But what we have been able to deduce is that her chakra coils have expanded far past what is considered normal for her age, as well as her muscles and tendons have become altered in a way. Kushina's father stepped up. What do you mean, sir? The doctor sighed and handed them a chart. Your daughter's chakra coils are twice the size of an academy student's, her muscles are firmer and far more flexible, and her tendons allow her a more varied array of movement. He smiled. I am not sure, but this could be the first stages of a new bloodline developing. Gasps were heard throughout the room as the information sunk in. The Kiri massacres had spilled into Uzu no Kuni, and had caused the death of more than 90% of Bloodlines clans in Uzu no Kuni. They had been trying to get the remaining bloodlines up to higher population to compensate for this loss, but it would be another few decades before the fruits of their efforts began to show. The idea that a new bloodline had been born in Uzu no Kuni, it was astounding. Seeing the look in the parents' eyes, the doctor spoke. While we are not sure, it is still a firm possibility. We will have to run bloodline tests just to be certain. In the meantime, Kushina should undergo a state of rest. The doctor cast a firm glance towards Kushina, and I do mean rest. No playing around, no training, and no exerting yourself. Kushina opened her mouth to protest, but a stern glance from her mother silenced her. She crossed her arms over her chest and pouted, "Fine." The doctor smiled. "Good girl." Her parents walked up and kissed her on the forehead before they left. Kushina laid back down with a smile on her face. She had just found out that she could very well be the matriarch of a brand new bloodline in Uzu no Kuni. She heard how well the matriarchs of new bloodlines were treated from history books, and how they were idolized in shrines and statues built in their honor. She smirked as she closed her eyes. She was definitely going to enjoy this. As she closed her eyes, she fell into a deep sleep, not knowing that soon, her entire world would fall apart. Next day, Kushina groggily opened her eyes, stretching out as she awoke from her night's sleep. She swung her legs over the side of the bed and headed over to the bathroom. As she entered, she looked up and screamed, "Ah!" She fell backwards onto her, and winced in pain. She looked down, and her eyes widened even further. No, this can't be happening. She stood up and ran to the mirror and looked at her reflection. She had deeper red hair, her eyes had a slit in them, 6 whisker marks on her face, 3 on each cheek, and she had 2 fox ears on top of her head. She looked back down to her rear end, and found 2 fox tails poking out of her tailbone. She reached up to her ears, and gasped as she saw claws on her fingers instead of nails. She began to hyperventilate as she backed out of the bathroom. What in the name of Kami? Creak. Kushina turned her head towards the door to her room as it opened, a nurse walking in with a clipboard. "All right, Kushina, are you Awa?" The woman stopped mid-sentence as she saw Kushina. The two stared at each other, until the nurse began to tremble as she pointed at Kushina. "E ears, T tails, C claws." Her eyes were filled with fear as she slowly backed up, and then screamed, "Ah!" She ran out of the room, dropping her clipboard, and running into several people. Kushina began to shake as she processed the look on the woman's face. Unrestrained terror. Just as Kushina processed this information, the doors slammed open, causing her to look up to see who had entered. What in the name of Kami is going on here? Kushina's eyes widened as she saw who had entered, her family. Her mother and father stared at her in shock, while her siblings were trembling at her new form. Kushina stuttered as she stood up. "Ka-chan, Tu-san, I." As she took a step forward, her family jumped back as fear entered their eyes. Her father pointed to her. What have you done with my child?" Her father's face contorted into a snarl of hatred. "My daughter, what have you done with my daughter?" he shouted as he took an aggressive step forward. Kushina began to panic. "Tu-san, it's me, Kushina, don't you recognize me?" She trembled as she stepped back, scared of her father's face, which was contorted with hatred. Her father sneered and grabbed a nearby chair, holding it aggressively. "Lies. My daughter is a human being. Not some demon fox." Kushina felt tears running down her eyes. "T2-san, I am Kushina." She looked towards her mother. "Ka-chan, please, tell Tu-san it's me." She reached out to her mother, and she flinched back and screamed. "Don't hurt me." She shivered and stood behind her husband, shaking with fear. Kushina watched as her own siblings followed her mother's example, cowering in fear behind their father. Kushina felt her heart break as she saw her siblings stare at her in terror. I am, Kushina." Her father snarled as he brought the chair up. Enough of your lies, Yuko. Die. He swung the chair at Kushina with as much force as he could muster. Kushina quickly jumped out of the way of the chair, just avoiding being hit with the chair, which shattered into several pieces as it struck the floor. Her father grabbed a sharp shard of the chair and held it aggressively. Stop running, you demon, and die. He charged forward, making sure to block any route Kushina could possibly use to run. Kushina felt terror. She darted her eyes around, hoping to find a way out, when her eyes landed on the window. She felt her mind running 100 miles a minute. She had the choice of jumping out a window, or being stabbed to death by her own father. The former was the better option. She quickly hoisted herself over the windowsill and slammed her body through the window, just barely breaking it enough for her to get through. She looked down, and her eyes widened in terror. She had to at least be on the 3rd floor of the hospital. She had no time to think as she suddenly plummeted down. She felt her heart stop as she was met with the undeniable fact that she was going to die, or so she thought. As if by muscle memory, she spread her limbs out and caught herself on the tips of her fingers and the balls of her feet, landing with only a bit of soreness in her limbs. She looked at herself in shock. What is happening to me? Before she could think any further, she instinctually jumped out of the way of a piece of wood flying towards her. She looked up to see her father screaming out of the window. Yuko. A Yuko took the form of my daughter. Get it, kill it. Almost immediately, people began to pour out of their houses as they heard her father's screams. When their eyes landed on her, their faces contorted with ear, before hatred began to pour from their eyes. Kushina began to let her tears fall freely as she saw the faces of the ones who had looked upon her with love, joy, and happiness, now contorted into hatred and fear. She bolted through the crowds, ducking out of the reach of those who tried to grab her, and sprinted towards the village gates. As she ran, she was suddenly stopped by a large blockade of merchant carts that were getting ready to leave the village. She looked around and found herself trapped, then looked at the carts, quickly diving underneath one selling kimonos. The carts then began to roll out of the village, with Kushina still hiding in the cart. She slipped aside a piece of cloth blocking her view and saw the villagers running through the streets, screaming for her death. She sat back inside, letting a stray tear roll down her cheek, when something caught her eye. She reached out and grabbed the object. It was a simple red kimono with white swirl designs. She looked down at her current attire, a hospital gown that was in terrible condition. She quickly slipped off her hospital gown and slipped on the kimono. Once she finished getting on the kimono, she rolled out of the merchant cart and into a bush that the caravan was passing by, waiting there until the merchants were far enough away. She stood up and brushed herself off, before casting one last glance back to Uzu no Kuni, and turned away, tears flowing from her eyes, knowing that she had lost her home forever, and would never have the chance to return. Wiping the tears from her eyes, she headed down the path, following the tracks of the trail before her, hoping to find some semblance of safety. End flashback. Kushina began to shake, sobbing as she held her knees lightly. For 3 weeks, I spent digging through garbage cans, stealing from shop owners, and stowing aboard caravans and ships, until I finally came to Konoha. During those 3 weeks, I learned how to turn into a fox kit, and used that to slip in and out of places quickly. She let out a choked sob as she wiped her eyes. I thought I would have to continue like this for the rest of my life. She looked up at Naruto with tearful eyes. But then you came along, and offered me a place in your home. She reached out and hugged Naruto. For over 2 years, you have told me everything about yourself, and I have told you nothing. She sobbed loudly as she squeezed Naruto tightly, burying her face in his chest. I don't deserve to be your friend. She was sobbing so loudly, that she never noticed the look on Naruto's face. It was contorted with anger, but not for Kushina. No. His anger was towards Kushina's family, her village. They threw her from her home, and tried to kill her, all because of her looks. He inwardly snarled as he made a mental vow, if I ever see somebody from that accursed country, I will make them suffer. Naruto looked down, and gently ran his fingers through Kushina's hair. Shish, it's alright, calm down Kushina. Kushina's sobs continued for several more minutes, before they began to slowly die down, until she was simply holding Naruto closely. Naruto lifted her head up, feeling any better Kushina? Kushina sniffled a bit and held onto him, a little bit. Naruto allowed a small smile to grace his features. That's good. He stood and smiled down towards her. Kushina, tell me, what have you learned today? Kushina looked at Naruto questioningly. I don't understand. Naruto sighed and kneeled down. Kushina, while you may not realize it, you did learn something tonight. He stood up. You will realize what you have learned tonight, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not the day after, but soon enough, you will realize what I am talking about. He turned around and walked towards the window. Come on, let's go to bed. Kushina watched as Naruto entered the window to his room, and looked down, she looked up at the night sky, the stars twinkling as the moonlight shone across the village. What did I learn? Kushina stood up and walked inside the window, but not before casting one last glance towards the village, before she closed the window behind her. Elsewhere, a small rat dug through the garbage as it tried to find a small scrap of food in the trash bins. The rat squeaked as it found a small slice of bread for it to feast on. It grabbed the slice of bread and scurried out of the trash can, landing on the ground before it darted down an alleyway, its prize in its mouth. It stopped just behind a dumpster as it set the slice of bread down, tearing off small bits of bread as it nibbled on its feast. Suddenly the rat's ears twitched, and it looked around, sniffing the air as it got on all fours, as if readying to flee. After a few minutes, the rat stopped twitching, and scurried back over to its meal of bread. It grabbed the piece it had started eating. Shaw! The rat had no chance to move, as a set of fangs shot out from underneath the dumpster it had chosen to enjoy its meal next to. A long slender body followed the fangs as it coiled around the rat tightly. The rat's eyes began to quiver as if a poison was being shot through its body while it was being crushed to death. Blood began to drip from its eyelids, flowing down the moose head, and dripping over the slender body, which was covered in black scales. The light in the rat's eyes dimmed, until it was completely gone. The life had left the small rodent's eyes. The slender creature uncoiled itself from around the rat just as the moonlight shone on the alley. The slender creature was a black snake with two horn-like structures on the tip of its snout, and long fangs dripping with venom. Its body looked like it was built for both striking and crushing its prey. The slender creature was the most venomous snake in all of Hai no Kuni. It hissed as drool dripped from its jaws, opening them widely as it moved forward, and gently grabbed the rat by the side of its body. The snake then lifted up the rat and slithered to a nearby water drain where it slinked through the holes, which were just big enough for it to fit through. The snake landed on concrete with a sharp plop, before it began to slither down the concrete edge. After it had traveled for what seemed like several village squares, it suddenly made a turn down a dark tunnel. It traveled several meters until it came upon a small hole in the wall. It slinked inside and was bathed in candle light. Several candles shone enough light to allow the contents of the hole to be revealed. Several snakes lay coiled on pipes and small pieces of concrete, and a few pieces of paper with childish drawings on them laid about. A single photo showing a beautiful dark-haired woman wearing kunoichi attire. Her hair was silky violet and her eyes were a dark green. She was absolutely beautiful. The snake slithered over to a shadowed portion of the room and dropped the rat from its mouth before looking up, allowing a hiss to echo from its throat. In the shadows, a pair of light green snake-like eyes opened, and looked towards the snake. The eyes focused on the rat, and then looked back to the snake. From the shadows, a small hand, thin, and childlike, which carried slightly elongated nails reached out towards the snake. The snake slithered up the arm and coiled around the forearm, hissing lightly as it nuzzled against the pale flesh. Another hand reached out and grabbed the rat, and brought it up to the face of the person. The candlelight shifted a bit, and revealed the face of the shadowed figure. It was a young girl, no older than 7 to 8 years old, unnaturally pale skin, scraggly black hair with violet highlights. Her eyes were a light green color, and were slitted much like a snake's. She opened her mouth, revealing a set of snake-like fangs, before they were buried in the flesh of the dead rat. The little girl swallowed the piece of rat whole, and turned towards the snake on her forearm, smiling a bit. "Thank you, Cerastes, thank you." She leaned down and kissed the top of the snake's head, and placed the rest of the rat on the floor, which was quickly swarmed by the other snakes in the hole. The candlelight dimmed again as the girl closed her eyes, and fell asleep in her home, a pit of snakes. Kushina's story has finally been revealed, and who is this young girl who lives amongst snakes? How will future events play out? Why am I asking you all these questions? Translations and terms. Cerastes. Greek serpent that was incredibly flexible, and had horns upon its head. Uzu no Kuni. Land of whirlpools. Uzumaki. Whirlpool. Please review. Nose seriously. Review. The lack of reviews is seriously depressing me. Review. PM. And flame with legitimate reasons. Cause flames such as, "This USKCS. You suck. Go die." Or, "This story has so many mistakes I don't even want to point them out." If you want to flame this story, give me legitimate responses, anything else will be ignored in full. Until my next update.